Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. This week we learn more about a local journalism collaborative project looking at COVID-19 recovery through a solutions-based lens. Here to share more about the project is Diana Alba-Soular, project manager of the Southern New Mexico Journalism Collaborative. Diana also serves as the New Mexico Local News Fund's Southern Project Coordinator. And we are also joined by Reyes Mata III, a reporter with the collaborative, who also works as a freelance journalist in Southern New Mexico. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Diana, I'd like to start with you. Could you share a little bit more about the collaboration that is going on here in Southern New Mexico?
Certainly. Well, I might have to start with the New Mexico Local News Fund to explain that a bit. That's a relatively new organization formed a few years ago in New Mexico, and its mission is to try and support local news across multiple different formats and across the whole state here in New Mexico, and that takes place in a variety of ways. But one of the needs that the organization saw was for sort of more support for local news in Southern New Mexico. And that resulted in the formation of what we're calling the Southern New Mexico Journalism Collaborative. And that's a partnership of local news organizations. And we're also working with some community organizations in this project as well. And we just have gotten off the ground the past couple of years. We had the first iteration of this collaborative about a year ago to cover the New Mexico legislature. But I'd say it's really taking more definitive shape and a broader mission and bigger scope this year. And so we're just now getting off the ground, but there's a number of media organizations from Southern New Mexico that are participating.
Yeah, it's a really exciting collaborative, and just so our audience knows, KRWG Public Media is also involved in this collaborative. Reyes, we're really excited to have you join this project and excited to see what reporting you'll be producing here throughout this solutions-based project. To give our audience a little bit about your background, can you share with us your experience of working in the borderland region?
Sure. I started writing about the border back in 1994. It was right when Donaldo Colosio was assassinated in Mexico. There was a lot of political drama surrounding that. And so that's when I started to research things, and I wanted to understand the border a little bit more, understand all of its dynamics. And I've continued writing and reporting about the border since then. I've worked with the El Paso Times, with Diario del Paso, both as a staff writer, and I also do freelance for Gannett and for the Albuquerque Journal. And most typically it's about border issues and also Southern New Mexico. And because the state of New Mexico, it has such a unique position here along the border. It's right, you have Arizona and Texas, which tend to lean conservative, and you have New Mexico, which, depending on the administration, it could go, one way or the other. So in many ways, New Mexico is kind of can kind of set the balance for this stretch of the border. So I'm always very interested in how things play out in New Mexico, especially Southern New Mexico, because of its proximity to the border.
Right.
So in this,
yeah, Reyes,
yes.
it is a unique area, and it's something that maybe a lot of folks aren't so familiar about if they don't live here or don't spend a lot of time here. So when folks ask you about this particular borderland region, what are some things that you tell them?
Well, it's what a lot of people, especially in New Mexico, I think what they don't necessarily appreciate, because they're not here along the border, is that the closer that you get to the border with Mexico, you start to see very profound changes within the communities. The communities become heavier Spanish-speaking communities. Also, issues of poverty are more at play, and together with that, then you have more of the conditions of isolation where they don't have access. These communities don't have access to a lot of the information that other parts of the state have. So that presents some really unique challenges for us as journalists, and that's exactly what this project is about. Is we want to go out and we want to talk to those communities who maybe traditionally have not been part of the so-called mainstream media coverage, and so it's going to be a learning process for us as well. But it's something that I think is overdue with a lot of these smaller communities, and being able to go out and talk to them directly to see what issues are on their mind, and it's something I'm really excited to step into.
Well, we're certainly excited to have you out there reporting throughout southern New Mexico. Now, Diana, this is a solutions-based journalism collaborative. Can you share with the audience what exactly solutions journalism is?
Definitely. So probably for most of the history of journalism in the modern era, journalism has been done from a lens of mostly focusing on the problems that exist in communities or in the geography where the news is being reported, but less focus on examining the solutions that might also exist to those problems. And so there's been a movement, I'd say the past, it's really gotten off the ground the past decade or so, but probably started even before then, that focuses on trying to critically examine possible solutions to issues in society, and those can be issues ranging from anything very small to very large. And the idea is, I think that some people might think that it's advocacy, and we don't want to cross that line into advocacy as journalists, but the idea is to really examine solutions that have been tried elsewhere, to see how they worked, how they didn't work, and everything in between. Usually, anytime there is a solution that's tried for any particular problem, it's usually not just problem-free in itself. And so just trying to examine those solutions, I think, adds a different angle to journalism and reporting that we think is valuable.
So taking a look at what may be working in other areas or other communities and shining light on that, is that really what what you're saying with this solutions-based journalism project has the opportunity to do?
Certainly, yeah. The solutions that are examined during the reporting can come from within the community. Maybe there is something that's already being tried that people just haven't heard of before or haven't really examined critically, or it can come from somewhere else as well. So maybe there's another state that has dealt with the same issue, maybe a different country even. It could be from anywhere across the world. The idea is that I think societies have a lot to learn from one another, and we've sometimes not examined that in journalism.
And this is something that we've seen grown across the country, solutions journalism, that style of journalism, not only across the country, but across the world with the Solutions Journalism Network. So for our audience members who may not recall, KRWG Public Media had the opportunity to work on a solutions-based journalism project in 2017 and 2018, where we collaborated with newsrooms across the country, or across the state, on resiliency. So having this opportunity to shine light on COVID-19 recovery, I'd like to talk with you about that, Reyes, because you're going to be out there talking with folks throughout southern New Mexico about this issue. What are some things that you are really going to hit the ground working on, or have perhaps already started working on, to gain insight into how folks are recovering from COVID-19 in our region?
Yeah, we very much want to have kind of an open-ended approach to this, to have our ears open to see what people are thinking, rather than stepping in with any preconceived idea on where these stories might go. I'm really starting off with a blank slate, and I generally want to understand how people are being affected in very personal ways. And the way that we're approaching this, of course, is with these listening sessions that we have set up throughout the different portions of the state. But the first overarching story that we're going to be working on is to track all of the COVID relief funds that have been coming in from the federal government, and see exactly where they're going. There's always the sensitive issue in southern New Mexico that somehow these funds they're taken up at the northern part of the state, and what ends up trickling down to the southern part of the state, may not be proportionate to what these communities need. So that's the first ambitious journalism story that I want to be working on, is seeing where that money is going, seeing what formula that the state has and where they're diverting that money. And within this concept of solutions journalism, we want to be looking with a broader scope, and not just where the money is coming from and if it's getting to the right people and the right organizations, but do these organizations and do these state entities and do these businesses, do they have the capacity to be able to be requesting these monies in the appropriate way? Or if they do not have that expertise, are they missing out on funds that they should be qualifying for? So that solutions approach to this might highlight a very real need for maybe these smaller cities, these smaller state subdivisions, even the businesses and people. They might need to have a specific liaison that's assigned to them who understands the government bureaucracy and makes sure that they're getting their fair share of COVID relief funds. And when you approach it in that way, very much thinking about a solution, I think it serves a greater benefit for the readers, because they can understand not just what the problems are, but also how they can go about to remedy those problems. And that's one of the great areas of value for this particular style of journalism.
Diana, one of the things that you have already been leading here in our area is coordinating with other newsrooms and also community organizations in our region to get their input on this project and what really needs to be addressed with this project. Reyes just brought up a point that, something that you can learn throughout these meetings. So I'd like to hear from you, what are some opportunities you think with these meetups and input from community members and community organizations? How does that bring value to this project?
Well, I think it adds value in that to really have, to really get to the heart of the issues that are on people's minds and the problems that are affecting people on a daily basis related to COVID and all of the challenges that has brought to southern New Mexico, as well as, the rest of the country. The starting point is just talking to people and, finding out how are they being affected still, how that could range from everything from, health, how people's health experience was, to how they lost jobs. Are they, able to get jobs now? COVID just disrupted so much in our daily lives that it's hard to say how long those effects are going to be really rippling through our daily lives. And so by having these listening sessions with Reyes going out to the different communities in southern New Mexico, and particularly we're making an effort to reach Spanish-speaking communities, which often have been overlooked. We're just hoping to get that baseline pulse of how are people feeling now, like how are their lives now, 2 years. We just are reaching the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic, which is nothing to celebrate, but it is a reality. And so we're just hoping to, hear from people on the ground and a wide range of people from um, all walks of life. And so to really push past talking to just community leaders, although community leaders are important, but and get to a broader base of people to hear their perspectives. And I think it will help shape the direction of our reporting in the long run, and in a more comprehensive way than is often possible by one single newsroom doing work alone. And also by listening to community organizations. Some of these organizations are really like the frontline responders to the stress that COVID has brought. And so it's great to hear their perspectives, because they're really the ones who are going to be working with people whose lives have been, damaged in a variety of ways because of COVID. So it's been great to hear those perspectives so far, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what Reyes learns when he's out and about throughout southern New Mexico.
Reyes, the COVID-19 has impacted New Mexico, the borderland region, so much. When you think about the state of New Mexico, we've seen recently over 7,000 deaths. El Paso has gained national attention a couple years ago on how bad the virus impacted the area. We've heard reporting on rural communities, how they have been impacted, and obviously there are some challenges with access to healthcare in the rural communities and access to information, as you mentioned earlier. With these listening sessions, can you share with us a little bit more about where you're going to be and how you think this can truly help out your reporting that you're going to be doing throughout the region?
Certainly. Yeah, we're going to have listening sections in all of the primary cities of far southern New Mexico. But one of the things that I most definitely wanted to get out there at this point, because I've already been speaking with people directly about their experiences with COVID. And there's one thing that's already very high on our radar, and that is long COVID. I am surprised by how many people who I talk to who are experiencing ongoing symptoms of COVID. Long COVID, as they describe it. I did not realize it. I mean, you see people out walking around, you assume they're doing okay, but when you actually have a conversation with them, they will tell you that they had COVID early on, most often before the vaccines were available. And they talk about the heart palpitations, they talk about fatigue, and these are not just older people, these are younger people as well. And that's one thing that struck me, is we are still in a pandemic, and I think that long COVID is going to become more and more of an issue. But long COVID is really not receiving a lot of media attention right now. We're still looking at transmission rates and the progress of vaccines and that sort of thing. But I think one of the emerging stories as this pandemic continues is going to be long COVID, and not just for the older people, but for younger people as well. That I wanted to make sure to mention that, because I think I'm hoping we're going to be able to pull some resources and really look at long COVID in Mexico and get a better sense on just how many people are suffering from that.
Reyes, you mentioned long COVID. This is something that's starting to gain a little bit of attention, and we're trying to understand just how big of an impact this is right now. You've mentioned that you don't think this is getting enough attention in the media. So I'd like to hear from you, from the people you're talking to in communities in our region. What are their biggest concerns right now when it comes to long COVID-19?
Their biggest concern is their immediate health and the health of their family members. I was surprised by how many people with whom I've spoken have told me that they have long COVID. They describe the heart palpitations. They also describe issues with their thyroid, shortness of breath, fatigue, all those classic symptoms of long COVID that we've been reading about. Excuse me. they are experiencing that in pretty large numbers, and this is just early on in the reporting. So it's going to be up to us in the media to put these stories out there and to show how long COVID is affecting family members in New Mexico, and so that on the legislative side, lawmakers understand that while this might not be the dominant headline right now, long COVID is already being experienced, and I think it's going to become an increasingly critical area, part of this pandemic, and we need to brace ourselves for what that means, and we're going to need to find funding sources to be able to help people out who have long COVID, and it's going to be affecting, their families and their ability to go out to work, and so we're going to go out, talk to people, share their stories, and so that when those funding opportunities do become available, lawmakers know that there are Americans who are suffering from that, and that it's going to need to be addressed.
And, I'd like to kind of talk with you both about this, Reyes. I'll start with you. A lot of folks may not have had a choice when it comes to going to work. We've seen how the impact of COVID-19 has affected different demographics and different income levels. So, moving forward with considering how policymakers should address this issue, what are some things that you think policymakers should be aware of through the people you're talking to right now and through reporting we know of about how to address COVID-19 so it's getting to everybody who really needs the help, especially lower income workers? Reyes?
Yeah, I think this is really going to depend on finding ways to get the message so that it's actually seen and heard by these communities out in New Mexico. And this is all pointing to building up that broadband infrastructure because many of the people who are out there don't have access to stable, regular internet hookups. And that's where so much information is shared. And while the technology might be out there for them to be able to get an internet hookup, oftentimes it's out of their price range. If you're talking about $120, $130, $40, $50 every month, for many of these families out there, that's just not something that they're able to afford. So I think the lawmakers need to be really sensitive to that. It's one thing to have the latest information and to know that there's communities out there at risk, but these communities themselves need to have a stable way to be able to access the latest accurate information because everything is, everything's moving in real time. We need to make sure that their access to the information is going at the same pace.
Diana, I want to close with you. Similar question, about the collaborative. How do you think it can make a difference in highlighting the issues that folks are facing dealing with COVID-19 recovery in our region?
Well, I think with communities in southern New Mexico, particularly rural communities, which comprises most of southern New Mexico, that there were longstanding challenges even before COVID. COVID exacerbated many of those, like the lack of access to broadband internet, which can connect you to healthcare and education and other these quality of life kinds of issues. And so with the collaborative, we're hoping to explore some of those key issues in southern New Mexico with our member organizations and with Reyes' reporting, and really examine not only the issues but some possible solutions to those problems. And I think we're off to a good start right now, but I'm looking forward to the direction that it will continue going in.
Okay, well, we're excited to find out more, and we look forward to learning more about the collaborative and the solutions journalism that will be taking place in our region about COVID-19 recovery. Diana Alba-Soular and Reyes Mata III, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So much.
And we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.